In the last lesson, we showed you how you can create your website and roughly sketch out what you want your website to look like. And this is always a good first step because it's always good to have kind of a blueprint to go off of in order to start creating your website. So now we've got that blueprint up and ready to go, we can open up our editor and actually start coding our website. So the first thing that we want to do is build out our HTML structure, and this structure is going to be used to house the basic containers that we're going to be using within our website. So we're going to see that we've got within our outline that we have a listing of several different areas where we've got content. So we can see we've got our head, nav, first, second, and footer, but the first and second are going to be combined within one container. So essentially we have 4 different container areas that we're going to output content in. And actually, when we're looking at this and the way that we're counting the different content area, we can even do it in a few different ways as well. So we see that this is actually split off, but we do have our search button moving up and down between there. So let's start out with dividing the content area up into 3 sections. And the reason I say 3 sections is because we have the items here within the header and we've got them moving around within there. So we've got our search, it moves up to there. So this has got to be contained within that same container area. Otherwise, we'd have to have the search completely floating on its own. So we need to set up one container for the head part, one container for the body, and then one container for the footer. So let's go ahead and do that. And also, when we're looking at our design, so our design is for the larger size. It's generally, we don't want to have it going too large. So we want to have a fixed width at a certain width of page, which means that I don't want this header to take up 100%, and I don't want this content to take up 100%. I want it to go to a max of maybe 1200 pixels across, and then once the screen size shrinks down, then I do want the 100%. So this is another thing that we got to take into consideration, where we've got to add a main wrapper around all of our content in order to control that final total size of our website. So let's begin with the HTML. And at first, you're really not going to see much within the preview area because this is just a matter of setting up all of those different containers. So the first one that we talked about, and this is one I'm going to use div for this because this is just going to be the page wrapper. So we can call it wrapper if we want and give it an ID of wrapper so we can identify it. So this is where we're going to house all of our different elements that are going to be contained within the website. And the reason that we split it off from body is because sometimes you do want to be able to work with them separately. So when you are thinking of them as separate elements, separate pieces of your website, try to split them off because this will give you access to each and every individual one within the CSS. And this is important when you're thinking about your design. So let's go into the next section, and this was just the header area. So we're just going to call it header. So this is HTML5 compliant, where with HTML5 they took a bunch of the different commonly used divs and they actually gave them tag names, and this is where we can use header, and I'm going to give it an ID of header. And this is in case, of course, if we use multiple headers within our websites. So sometimes in the content area you can have a header as well, and so on. So next I'm going to look at adding in the content area. So this is going to be a div as well, and I got to keep this within my wrapper. So I can add some commenting in here. So the header contents. And this one we're going to do a div. We could do section as well. So this is just going to be a main div where we can actually do, let's do a section. So section, and we're going to give it an ID of content. And just to note that header, section, footer, A-side, div, they're all going to work within the same way. So this is just a different way to present all of this different type of content. So also within that head area, just to loop back quickly, we're going to have different grouped areas. So the head area is going to be actually fairly complex, where we're going to group out, maybe we're going to have a div here that's going to contain the company info. So this will be ID, logo. And then next we're going to have a nav, and this is where we're going to contain our navigation contents. So we're going to create a list to contain all of our nav elements. And one other one that we want to include is we want to have a search form. And then this, going back to our original design, we can see that we have our search box and we have it moving around, and this is where it's separated out from the header, and this is why we've separated out the nav, because these are actually going to be moving around as separate sections of the website, or separate contained areas, containers of the content of the website, and this is why we're separating them all out. But we can see that they're all sitting within the header section. And so we've set up a content area. Maybe we should actually separate out that content area. We're going to put the aside. So this is used for a sidebar. So it's understood that this is an actual sidebar. Sometimes if you're containing them within that same container, it gives you a little bit more control on the background and so on. So this is something that you can add, or if you want, or you don't have to. But if you put padding around it within that main container, then you can't do the full percentages. And then what I usually like to do is add that padding within each and every one of these elements. And then lastly, let's update and add in our footer, and I'm going to give it an ID of footer so that we can identify it. And quickly looking over this, I need to add in something over here as well. So aside is typically your sidebar, so I'm going to give it an ID of sidebar, and basically first section, second section, footer, and up here is going to be logo, nav, search. So those are identified as all of our main content areas, containers within our website. So essentially we do have 6 different containers where we're going to move around and we're going to keep content in. And then this is going to be useful within our CSS when we start applying styling and moving all of this content around within the page. So in the next lesson, we're going to fix up some of this HTML, add in some dummy content to actually make it look more like it's going to be a website. And then we're going to apply CSS, and this is going to magically transform all of this just plain text into a website. So all of that is coming up in the next set of lessons.